Now this is more like it. It goes without saying, but Pac-Man was a complete phenomenon. Pac-Man fever was very real in 1981, and what Namco feared initially would not be a success ended up grossing over $1 billion in the United States alone. Midway, who is the US distributor of Pac-Man, was initially hesitant of the success as well, only ordering around 5,000 units. However, they were more than pleasantly surprised as the game continued to print money for them. It was the highest selling arcade game of 1981, and likely would have done the same in 82 if it weren't for Miss Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, depending on the list you're looking at. Midway was eyeing a sequel to Pac-Man, but Namco wasn't producing one, at least not to their knowledge. Midway had began developing Pac-Man Plus, which was a conversion kit for the original Pac-Man. Many of you might be asking yourselves right now, well, what is a conversion kit? A conversion kit, or an enhancement kit, was more or less a piece of hardware that would change the arcade machines to play different or altered games. It could be as serious as a whole new game, or simply cosmetic changes. You can kind of think of them as mods for Skyrim or Minecraft, except in the arcade, and it would actually require new hardware, not just new software. Pac-Man Plus, which was developed as a sequel to Pac-Man by Midway, was more or less a series of minor changes to make the game harder. For one, the ghosts look very different when a power pellet is eaten, they're more aggressive, and they are faster than in the original game. Power pellets can also do different things like make the maze invisible or not turning every ghost blue. Finally, it has Pac-Man chugging down cola instead of eating his fruits and vegetables. If they would have given him an extra 50 pounds, it would be the most American-made Pac-Man game ever.
I'm not fat, I'm big-boned.
As the kit was nearing completion, they were approached by some developers with their own sequel to Pac-Man, one which would blow Pac-Man Plus out of the water. Midway was approached by General Computer Corporation, or GCC. Those previously stated enhancement kits were what GCC were known for at the time. They had developed one for Atari's Missile Command, calling it Super Missile Attack. This drew the ire of Atari, who would take them to court over copyright infringement. As a part of this legal battle, GCC could no longer sell any kits without the consent of the original game's manufacturer. This is why they were approaching Midway, as they had made a kit for Pac-Man which they called Crazy Otto. This kit would end up becoming Miss Pac-Man after some changes. Of course, Otto would be replaced with Miss Pac-Man, the previous ghost models were reused from the original Pac-Man, and the new mazes from Crazy Otto were used. Midway finally had the sequel that they wanted. The story is a bit muddy as far as licensing and rights is concerned, because even though Midway had the rights to Miss Pac-Man in America, it seems that they overstepped their boundaries throughout their ownership. Depending on who is answering the questions, Namco was either involved in some capacity with the development of Miss Pac-Man, or completely unaware of the game until its release. Between this debacle and the explosion of Pac-Man sequels and merchandise from Midway, Namco would pull the rights from Midway in 1984. It is worth noting that Namco continues to use Miss Pac-Man as a character and repackage her in new arcade releases. However, they don't do that with any of the other Midway developed sequels, showing that while they might not have been there to create the character, they do hold her as a member of the Pac-Man lineage. This is probably in large part due to the overwhelming success of Miss Pac-Man compared to Midway's other sequels. Miss Pac-Man was a huge success, topping the charts for the cabinets made in '82 and gobbling up more quarters than her husband. It continued to dominate the arcade for years, coming to net $1.5 billion by 1995 in arcade numbers alone. This is even more impressive when you keep in mind that the game was United States only. Japan did not see Miss Pac-Man until 1993, a whole 8 years after the sequel was made in the United States, further showing that Namco might not have been so cool about the whole Miss Pac-Man thing in the first place. And this success is very deserved. Miss Pac-Man is a perfect example of a few tweaks taking something from good to great. At its core, Miss Pac-Man is a retread of Pac-Man. There's mazes where you need to collect all the pellets, make sure to avoid the ghosts, and eat different foods that show up. These ghosts are harder to avoid here than in the original Pac-Man because their AI has been overhauled. In the original Pac-Man, if you played through, you would be able to accurately predict the ghost movement because their routines were pretty rigid. If you want to know exactly how the Ghost AI works, you can watch this video here, which goes into great detail on exactly how to manipulate the Ghost AI. In Miss Pac-Man, there is less prediction for what each ghost is going to do, which makes the game more fun in my personal opinion. This, mixed in with the different mazes, makes the game more dynamic in a way that the first Pac-Man just wasn't. Not every single maze is a perfect example of level design, but they are all more fun than they are frustrating. Some of these include these little areas, like here, which feel claustrophobic as ghosts could get to you from either side with you having no way out. Similar to Donkey Kong, I found myself playing the game to try and see what the next stage was as well as chasing a high score. And once I had seen all those stages, all I wanted to do was chase the high score. And before someone says it, yes, I am using a fast-chipped enabled ROM of Miss Pac-Man. Some arcades have their machines with the fast chip in it, which makes Miss Pac-Man faster, while others don't. From my experience, most of them do, and I think it is the best way to experience Miss Pac-Man. But I could be pretty biased, because honestly, I just like games and things that are
fast as fuck, boy!
Without the speed boost, Miss Pac-Man is slow, especially compared to the ghosts. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like Miss Pac-Man and the Ghost should be about equal footing in terms of speed, but from about the third reset on, without the speed hack, the Ghost will catch you no problem. You better hope that they take a different turn when trying to run from them, otherwise they'll catch up to you pretty quickly. With the speed hack on, it pretty much changes the game into something else entirely. It turns the game into a more offensive game in the early stages and a more complex game of cat and mouse in the later ones. While the power pellets do give a decent amount of time to eat the ghosts in the first few stages, by the time you're on the second level, that time gets pretty humorously short. I mean, they start blinking right away. The power pellets at a certain point are pretty useless. I got to the point where I gave up on getting the power pellets for purely offensive reasons in the later stages, relying only on them as a get out of jail free card. Once you get into a rhythm with this game, it is extremely hard to put down. I didn't really intend on playing it as long as I did, but there was something in my caveman brain which started to chase the high score that I got from last time. I think that there's something satisfying about seeing your score go up a little bit each time you play, and there's also something really satisfying about getting better at the game time after time. This makes it hurt even more when you're particularly close to a high score and you suffer a pretty brutal defeat. In an actual arcade, I'm sure that this is more of an obsession than it is just playing against yourself, as there's not a high score board like in some games, but instead just one score that's shown on the screen at all times. And there's nothing better than holding that one score to yourself so you could walk by, point to it, and be like, you know that guy? That guy's fucking me. Speed hack or no, the game is actually very generous with the amount of time you're allowed to play. Unless you're really awful, you can play for about 10 minutes on a single quarter, which is great compared to some of the other arcade games from the same time. I know other games that would instantly try and screw you over within the first 45 seconds of booting the game up, whereas here you get plenty of playtime. There's a reason that I'll always throw a quarter down in any Miss Pac-Man machine that I see. It's a great game and a great way to kill 10 minutes or so. That is, if you can stop yourself after a single play. As far as the top 100 list goes, I wasn't initially sure where to put this. Part of me wants to put it lower because it is simply an arcade game, but another part of me wants to put it particularly high because it's just that much fun. For that reason, I think that I'm going to put it at number 10. Yeah, we're getting a little ballsy here. I would say as far as every game I've ever played, I think that it really does fit up there with the best I've ever done. It's very simple, it's very pick up and play, it's great for anybody old or new to video games, and for that reason I think it's one of the top 10 games that somebody should play if they want to play the best video games of all time. But what do you guys think about it? Do you guys like Miss Pac-Man, or do you like Pac-Man more? Or are you one of those weird people that likes one of the sequels, like Pac-Mania or Pac-Man Jr. from Midway? Also, if you guys are curious, this is my high score, 93,400. If you can beat that score, then good on you, and also go outside, your family probably misses you. So, try and beat me off with that high score, otherwise, until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.
That's right, we're Japanese.